This podcast includes unapologetic logic and reason and may not be suitable for all audiences. In a world full of nonsense, he's been called the voice of uncommon common sense. He sees the abnormal that many find normal. Author and award-winning speaker, he is Chris.
Yesterday, I know, barely abiding by the law. A couple of simple hardware things I needed, legitimately. I don't know if you could officially call them home repairs. It was for my dog gate going off my deck, but either way, I felt it was enough of an emergency to warrant taking my freedom into my hands to make the trek out to Lowe's, but I never made it inside. You know why? Because I forgot my little mask. Yeah, because I'm not one of those people that wears the mask when I'm sitting in the car by myself. But hey, you can never be too careful. Yesterday was like my first experience wearing it for any length of time, and I guess I'm going to have to go through like the same psychological process that I went through getting used to gas mask and mop gear during the Gulf War. And I wonder if on that front I couldn't claim that because of PTSD that it's just not possible for me to wear a mask. You think I could get like a no mask required card that I could carry or something like that? I don't know. What else are you going to do except sit around and complain about it, right? Isn't that all anybody's doing right now? Just sitting around complaining. Meanwhile, the debt. Here's the headline. America's debt races toward $25 trillion. Does anybody care about that? Well, 84% of the people say they need another stimulus. Well, of course they do. Of course they do. You say, hey, do you need any more money? No, I'm good. Of course I need more money. What, are you kidding me? I don't know. What else are we going to talk about today? Went out for a nice little hike yesterday. Got a couple of good miles in. Actually did a little Facebook Live video while I was doing that, and I know I mentioned this the other day, and I mentioned that there's a link somewhere in the description, wherever you're listening here, to my Facebook page. You can follow me, and when I mentioned that the other day, there was like a mass jump in my number of followers. I don't know if one person did. I gotta wonder if anybody's listening sometimes. Am I just sitting here talking to the wall? Do what you want. I thought it was a good video, okay? Either way, it was a good walk. It was good to get outside. Two of the things that I talked about were, are you doing anything now that it looks like we're heading in the direction of reopening on some level just about everywhere, except for maybe places like New York and some other concentrated areas. And it looks like we might be a little bit delayed here where I'm at, too, because they feel that it's, a hot area, if you will. But looks like everybody's going to be reopening to some extent based on that as we go back in business, so to speak. Is there anything that you plan to do differently in terms of planning? Are you just expecting that everything's going to go back to normal and that was just like a one-off thing and we're once and done and, now life can just go on happily ever after? Or are you thinking, this is the early stages of something? Well, let me help you out with that. This is like the bottom of the first inning, okay? There's a couple of guys on plate, and there's a couple of outs and a strike, you know what I mean? You know what the most dangerous time in this whole thing is going to be? The riskiest time, I should say? It's going to be as things do reopen. Because there's going to be a lot more known infected people here. And they're going to begin the process of putting people back together and hope that it doesn't spread with people that maybe didn't have any exposure to it. A lot of variables and all that. But I expect that things are going to be different. I just stopped in a 7-Eleven the other day. When was the last time you were in a 7-Eleven? You know what I was getting of all things? It was actually yesterday. It was yesterday on my way to Lowe's. You know what I was getting? A Monster. Well, they didn't stop me from going in there. They're like, yeah, come on in. You don't have any mask on. I didn't even notice it, to tell you the truth. I don't drink a lot of Monsters. Don't start sending me emails about that. And you shouldn't drink the Monsters. I like Monsters, and I have a Monster like twice a year, all right? And yesterday was the day. It's an epidemic. I gave up vaping. Give me a break. That's the other thing I was talking about. While I was walking, doing the Facebook Live, and I looked down on the trail, and there's a pack of, an empty pack, presumably, I don't know, I didn't check, but pack of Camel cigarettes sitting there. Camel cigarettes. I was like, man, that's like some hardcore old Italian dude or something like that. This smoking filterless cam. I think they were filterless. Hardcore, man. That's just like right at it, right? Right at it. And they know how to carry on. I ain't afraid of nothing. I'm afraid of nothing. That was the other question that came to my mind. At what point would there be a virus or something that you would be afraid of? I ain't afraid of nothing, not me. Ooh. I found the point. I can tell you the point that people would be afraid. And I think when you realize the answer to this question, it's going to it's very telling about human society on a lot of different fronts. But I think that where you would see a huge shift in people's opinions about things is if children were more vulnerable. If this was a child-centered disease as opposed to an old person-centered disease, I think you would see people. When your kids, if your kids aren't eating, what was a quote I saw the other day? The average person is only 3 missed meals away from becoming a savage. And it was an Army Ranger supposedly said it. But somebody's going to email me about this because I didn't fact check this, and somebody's going to know. One of you, what was that game? What was that game you answered the questions? This is how out of touch I am. Jeopardy or something? One of you, no, what's the game where you like know the answer to everything? You know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's Jeopardy. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that kind of thing. You know, one of you whizzes at those kind of things. Somebody's going to know the answer to that. Where'd that originate from? And the quote is something along the lines of, the average person is only 3 missed meals away from becoming a savage, and that's why I carry a gun. And supposedly that was an Army Ranger that said that. So, this is why when I'm going to send out an email. I mentioned this story the other day, yesterday, I think also on the podcast, about the guy who was able to track me down. And I got to send him back an email. I think my sarcasm didn't come across very well, but it was a very friendly exchange, just for the record. And seems like a interesting guy, I'm guessing. But just wants to remain anonymous, which is probably a good idea. Who knows, right? It's probably like QAnon I'm emailing with, you know what I mean? And it's funny because there was a play on the name and that he used in the email, and I didn't catch it. But it did seem off to me. I was like, that's got to be somebody that I know. Like something about the email just seems suspicious to me, and still kind of does, you know? It's probably like... somebody QAnon. Sorry. I almost made that mistake again. I don't want to fall into that trap. QAnon. It's not QAnon. Hey, what do you want me to tell you? Hey, by the way, guess what I got? I have got a 16-ounce can of Miller High Life that a buddy of mine gave me. Yeah, I just saw it in the garage. He gave it to me, I don't know, like a week or two ago, something like that, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I think it was on Easter. Did he stop by on Easter? I forget. How's this for friends? Buddy of mine stops by and drops off 3/5 of booze. Yeah, in a pandemic. Would you ever do something? I would never. It could be my brother. It could be my brother that gave me a kidney. I wouldn't give him 3/5. No way. I don't get. There's no price you can put on a bottle of Crown in a pandemic. But this selfless brother of mine comes by and drops off this booze. But anyway, I was having this fun little exchange to get back to my point. But Jen has worried from time to time about my anonymity. And, so I try to keep a certain level, right? A certain barrier. But generally speaking, I don't really worry about it too. And we got 3 dogs, one of which probably remove your limbs before you realize they were gone. We've got an alarm system that's pretty highly sophisticated. None of that had any doings by me because I really don't care. As a matter of fact, I pray every night for the person that actually makes it in one time. Like, I hope they're okay. I hope that they've made their heart right with the Lord before they come in. Let me just say that. I just never really worried about that. Even ever since I was a kid, I remember my father yelling at me when I was a kid, like, you can't leave the doors open and unlocked. And it just never really bothered me. Just never really too nervous about something like that. Maybe it's better that we are a little more careful, especially these days. But anyway, security might become an issue. There's people talking. You don't know what's going to happen. We're still early in the process. And I guess what I'm saying is that I wouldn't take anything for granted. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't take for granted that you're going to be able to buy toilet paper like normal come May 8th or whenever that's like the next level of opening here in Pennsylvania. But that's not a full open. And they threw so many things out there. This response, man. I don't want to criticize the response because I don't think it's helpful, but let me just say there's consequences to everything, and we are going to feel the consequences for a lot longer than the quarantine period. And I feel like there was a lot of fire-ready aim that went into this planning, I'll tell you that. And it was, we're gonna shower you with money. Just sit back and relax. We'll make sure you have all of your essentials and that you're comfortable. Not a worry. We're going to take a rent holiday. Remember how beautifully the politicians made it sound? Rent holiday, interest holiday, more money on unemployment than you're making if you're working. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I realize that, but it's not, is it? It really isn't. It hasn't been great at all. Why is that? Yeah, human nature never really changes. The heck else I was just going to say? It just slipped my mind. Damn it. I hate when that happens. What are you going to do? I'm getting older. I'm really flying by the seat of my pants today. I'm feeling pretty good. I feel a little bipolar lately. I was talking about that was the other thing I was talking about on the Facebook Live. The psychological impact of the quarantine and everything that's going on over the past 20 years, which for a guy like me, and I think maybe this ties in with some of the other things you see statistically, but I'm in the prime of my life. Like I'm in the late stage of the prime of my life. And, quite frankly, I haven't amounted to much of anything. I don't know. It's been a roller coaster ride. I can tell you that. It hasn't been a straight line. I do the best I can. And as a whole, as of today, it seems to be working out. But man, oh man. I don't know how anybody feels completely insulated about what's going on. I really don't. Debt is an enemy right now. Debt for you personally, debt for businesses. Debt is very, very evil right now. And that's one of my concerns, even before the whole Corona thing. I'm like, there's a lot of debt. And you know what always precedes the fall? The high levels of debt. Every time. That's what happens. They keep putting this money out there. And they just, I think there becomes so many tiers to it, right? And this is this is another thing I want to talk about. And it's not really my area of expertise, so just take this for conversational purposes only. Don't put it in your iTunes review. He was talking about the economy. He doesn't know anything he's talking about. Agreed, I don't. Okay. But what I do know is that there's this very deep level interconnectedness to the economy. What am I talking about? I was reading a great article because, see, as much as it's not my area of expertise, I do know how to read. And there was another article I read, by the way, on how to spot lies and fabrications and deception. Do I need to do a podcast on that? Would that be helpful to you? Maybe I will. I wrote a book about it, but see, I think I might have branded it wrong. And we'll talk about it. I'm talking about the book on common sense, how to get it even if you don't know what it is. And I talk about the 4 questions to come to a common sense answer, the right answer, if you will, or the logical solution. Yeah, sometimes there is more than one. And like I said, everything has consequences. There's always different ways you can go, and some things will work well in some places and not in others. I can kind of see how, with the culture of China, that a socialist regime there would be much more welcome than, say, here. You know, where you've got people here that are waving their hands and saying, freedom is more valuable than life. And that freaks some people out. Some people are afraid of that. Always has been the case since the Revolutionary War. Let me tell you a little story. Oh, you don't know the story? I can't believe you don't know this by heart by now. Back in the days, the Revolutionary War in the United States was as much a civil war as it was a war of independence. A lot of people don't realize that. See, we wanted to close that chapter to bury those burdens of division and put that behind us, which was a good idea on one front, but the consequence, always a consequence, the consequence of that decision is we never encapsulated that history so that the nation could learn from it, grow from it when it came up again, which was during the Civil War, and now here we are again. We've got this problem of division with the added problem of debt. And really, even back to the Revolutionary War, you know what the real core issue was? The Britain's debt. That's what generated this high demand for taxes. And the colonists, the wealthy colonists here said, what are we doing? These guys over here, they're 3,000 miles away. At that time, they couldn't pick up a phone and talk to them. It took months to correspond back and forth. They said, those guys back there, they don't care about us. All they're doing is they're taking 10% off the top or whatever it was. What do we need then? What are they doing for us? Not doing anything for us. I've said this before. Even with tax, people don't really complain about taxes being too high. The complaint usually is that they're not getting enough value for the money. Okay? People are going to pay a certain amount for whatever the case might be. That's the argument I make when it comes to public education. Why is public education cost 3 times more than what a private education costs? Why? I say, well, because the unions got decent benefits for the teachers finally after years. I know the fight. I've saw it in my lifetime, and it was a real, genuine fight. And I think if you said, hey, it's costing 10% more so that we can take good care of our teachers, I think most reasonably minded people would say, okay, yeah, we'll pay a little more in tuition or taxes, whatever you want to call it, so that the teachers can have a good standard of living. But 3 times more expensive? That's a problem, right? It's a problem. But there's always these different ways of looking at these things, I guess. I don't know. I'm all over the place here, aren't I? There was a point I was trying to make somewhere. I hope I didn't miss anything. Hopefully you're still with me, didn't fall asleep. I've been feeling good. I said this whole thing. I was talking about the psychology of pandemics. This guy had wrote up this great article on the whole thing, and I was thinking about it. I said, I've said this before. Like you and I are going through the exact same thing, and but we're experiencing something completely different. Isn't that kind of funny? Isn't that funny? Right? It's an interesting little thing in itself, right? But anyway, for me, I've got plenty of company. I've got a homestead that's quite comfortable, and we've got resources that we need. So we're pretty much about as unaffected by this as you can be. There is a little bit that's affecting us, but I'm not getting into that. But I was thinking about my experience as, say, compared to somebody who lives alone in an apartment complex that maybe they don't know anybody, and maybe they don't have a big stock of anything. I don't know. Maybe they don't have the financial resources to stock up. I said I stopped in the 7-Eleven the other day. Yesterday? The other day. Yes, everything's the other day. Like I've lost track of time. That's the one thing I can tell you legitimately is I've lost track of time. Weird, right? I can't put my finger on that. Yeah, my schedule's adjusted a little bit. I'm not getting up at 4:30. Yeah, it's been a little later. What can I tell you? I've been off my grind a little bit. But look, think about that. How about an old person in in an old age home that has no company, and now you can't have any visitors. An old person in a hospital, and I say, you can't have any visitors. Nobody. How lonely. And wow. Some people that are going to have some crazy stories coming out of this whole thing. So I don't know if you heard the latest news. Some of these drugs that the president said that were sounded hopeful. Don't believe the propaganda, by the way. I saw these press conferences firsthand. I haven't seen all of them, but these I did, in the comments that he made about these drugs. And he was very general. He said they're showing hope, we're hopeful, things like that. He didn't offer any guarantees or, pound his fist that it was his drug or guarantees or nothing like that. Nothing like that. Don't believe what the media puts out there. Not that you would. But anyway, there's a couple of interesting things. They said that these drugs, that there was some complications with them in the early testing. And I had a feeling that was going to happen because some of these drugs, there's been some experience using them in the military, and I knew that there was problems with them there. So I wasn't at all surprised by that. And now they're also saying that this is a big thing. And this is what I want you to consider in terms of like planning and going forward after this. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, or what we're planning to do. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. They're saying that it may be very difficult to develop a vaccine for this thing. And I believe that. They say a flu vaccine, but do you realize what happens? They look at the strains that are going around. They try to pick the one that they think is most likely to have the biggest impact, and then they vaccinate people against that one strain. And I may not have this exactly right, but in a general sense, I believe I do. And then everybody takes this vaccination, of which I do not, by the way. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, so I don't want to go there. But at this point in my life, I've been pumped full of so much stuff that I'm very careful about what I take, medicine-wise and vaccination-wise. And I could go through a ton of stories I don't want to get into right now. But they're saying that they may not be able to easily, if at all, develop a vaccine to this thing. And think about that a second. Think about that. Because every time this thing makes a wave, there's going to be a problem now. And I was trying to think to myself, is this valid, or is this being politicized? And I think that the answer to that is yes and yes. And I want to just be sure that I'm clear on this. I think I did say this yesterday, if not the other day. And here's my position on this whole. It is a real virus. There's little doubt in my mind on that. It's questionable whether it was developed by the Chinese on purpose or it came out of Wuhan. I don't know that it materially matters to dealing with what we're dealing with. It may matter a lot in terms of our relationship with China and whether or not they owe us anything. In terms of us moving forward, I don't think it really has anything to do with anything. There's some indication that they think that this thing may die off naturally after a 6 to 8 week period, or it loses its oomph. There's a technical term for you, oomph. I don't know. They don't know for sure. It's airborne. It's not airborne. You all got to wear it. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of stuff going around. Some of it, when you look at the information and you say, that seems kind of, that seems plausible to me based on what the data is saying. But from what I'm being told and told by people that I know and trust, and from what I've read, that it's a pretty nasty virus, that it can put some pretty formidable people down. I'm talking about healthy people taking a pretty good gut shot based on, getting this virus. Not everybody. A lot of people, you've heard it all, right? There's a lot of people, we're asymptomatic. Okay, great. It's true. It's all true. All true. But, flu season does affect productivity. And in this particular case, I think there is a risk, like what's happened in New York, where in some of these places you say, if we get hit, we don't have the hospital staff and equipment and ability to respond to something on that scale. And for those of you in the country, what do I got to shut down everything because New York City can't take care of themselves? Well, guess what? Some of these small town hospitals will get the same problem. if not worse. If not worse. You see, at least in New York, they can call over to New Jersey, they can call down to Philadelphia. If you're out in Bangor, Maine, who do you call? I don't know. There's not a lot of options. So it's everything that's different a little bit, but I think it is a nasty virus. Things you want to avoid. Looks like, there's no way to make it go away. And it doesn't sound like they're feeling super warm on any kind of virus, at least not anytime soon. What I've also heard about it sounds like it's been pretty well confirmed at this point, that at least in a certain number of patients, it triggers an autoimmune response. And this is very dangerous. There's other conditions that can cause this to occur, but it essentially causes your immune system to attack the body instead of the virus. There's something with your white blood cells, and they begin to attack your organs, and that's where you remember early on me talking about some of these videos and this crazy response, and I think that was why. And that's why I ask you the question, like, how bad would it have to be for you to say, okay, I will surrender my freedom? I was just curious. Obviously a rhetorical question. I've done my best to comply with what's going on. I've done my share of grumblings about it, as you've heard. But overall, I think I've been pretty supportive of the measures. And this is where I say that, keeping the history of these things well documented and hopefully learning some lessons. I guess in all fairness, they knew this pandemic was coming, but it's like a terrorist attack. Until it happens, governments, they're just not very good. In most organizations in general, it's like when a fire breaks out. And so, how could you not know that the exits were blocked? Well, we did. You just, you know what I mean? You're complacent. Or you just don't see the threat because, the pandemic, the movie. All of a sudden it hits. You're like, holy crap. Weren't we paying people to plan for this stuff? And we were. That's part of the problem with that, right? Like if you're getting paid, you get a staff that your job is to, I don't know, what are you going to do? Apparently it wasn't enough, whatever the case might be. But based on looking at the information that we were looking at the time we were looking at it, I think I was pretty supportive of the government response. I know I was, as a matter of fact. And I second the call. But I also do think it is time to open up. As I've processed all that, I do believe that a phased opening would be better. And I'm reversing course on this. You heard me say before, what's the test and the constitutional aspects of this and the blah, blah, blah. And I think those questions still remain and probably need to be debated on some degree, don't you think? And they won't because, it'll go away and then they'll just leave it for the next virus people to deal with, Our kids, I guess. I don't know. Maybe us, maybe not. But either way, it's just not going to be something that's going to get discussed. But aside from all that, I mean, it kind of seems like it's helped, shutting all this stuff down. I mean, some of the stuff, I have to tell you, and I know some of this might not be popular, but let's face it, gyms, those are breeding grounds for spreading stuff. I've often felt that I got sick at the gym. You just, you know what I mean? It's hot and things haven't been wiped down and there's body fluids. I'm talking about sweat, all over, you know what I mean? And people are sharing a water fountain and you're sitting on the bench they sat on and it's dirty. It's dirty. It's a place that's, ripe for disease spreading, quite frankly. If you own a gym, I guess you're not too happy about me saying that, are you? I don't know. Is it necessary? Is that going to be one of the changes coming out of this? That you say, yeah, you know what? Old home gym equipment's going to become very valuable. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, do I really? The gym's one of the reasons we moved here is because there's a beautiful gym right around the corner. And now I'm like, I don't know. How quickly things have changed. So I had another thought I'll throw at you. I'm throwing some deep stuff at you today. Pretty good podcast, don't you think? A lot of deep stuff. You're like, yeah, whatever. You're like, what? Now's the time to wake up. this just became clear to me. It's kind of weird. Like, this is another thing. They're saying a lot of people are having very vivid dreams through all this quarantine stuff. I haven't had that going on at all. Actually, I've been sleeping like a baby. That's a little weird for me. I've been sleeping better than ever. I don't usually sleep well at all. But I've had this clarity on certain things, particularly dealing with other people and personalities. And it became clear to me that we now have two political parties that represent us in the following fashion. And that is, the Republican Party is essentially the party of business owners, entrepreneurs. And the Democrats have become the party of the government workers union. And I think what you're watching play out is a fight between those two powers on a broader scale. You know what I'm saying? That's what kind of came to my mind. Is when you have a very large organization, like, say, the energy industry, which I think is another one, when that kind of, something of that kind of influence begins to operate in a fashion that's no longer organized, when it becomes chaotic, I think it throws out a weird energy. I don't want to start sounding all goofy. I feel like it's just the second time I've talked about like energy and so, yeah. All right, no, I'm not. Who was that lady that ran for president? She was all into like the psychic lady. No, I'm not going that route. But do you know what I'm saying? It's just, it's like after September 11th. I've talked about this very, very often. And that's, got quiet. And it felt different because it really did. There was a change in the physical presence of the country. Flights canceled. Did it shut down flights around the world? Had to shut down others because nobody was flying here, right? Turning around, I guess. I don't know. But it was a very different time. Things felt different because they were different. And it made me realize that you can have these energies, these large-scale energies that can really affect people and society in ways that's kind of goofy when you think about it. I mean, think about how you felt after September 11th. I don't know where you were. For us here in Pennsylvania, we were not too far from the epicenter of September 11th. It was a little freaky. Tell my son that story. He was the age my daughter is now. He was 5. It was a freaky time. And this is a freaky time. It's a different kind of freaky time. But it's a freaky time in the same kind of way. Weird, strange, different, whole different setup. So how's that going to affect things going forward? But that made me realize, like, what is it that's the core of causing the division in this country? And I knew that a lot of the symptoms, centralized government versus not, and more taxes, less taxes, more government control, less government control. These are all the core political arguments that you would see then filtering down to the different issues. But then when you would look at certain things, you go, that's just not making sense. For example, Mitch McConnell said yesterday that the states should declare bankruptcy if they're out of money. That is the mind of a business person who would say, oh, well, you can't pay your debts, your revenues dropped unexpectedly, and restructure your debts. Who do you think would primarily get caught in that scenario? And this is something to pay attention to as well, because let me tell you something. I really believe that there's going to be coming some tough decisions to be made. And people are going to get caught off guard. But the business mind, what do you think gets hurt if the states declare bankruptcy and don't pay their debtors? Well, it would be bondholders primarily. And a lot of that debt, I believe, is held by Fraternal Order of Police, Retirement Fund, Teachers Union, retirement funds, government worker retirement funds. So you could see which circles that wouldn't go around too well in, right? Not too well at all. And I think Mitch McConnell needs to be a little bit careful with that kind of talk because there's a consequence to that. There's a consequence to that. State goes bankrupt. State doesn't have resources to offer down to the municipalities, and guess what's going to happen? The municipalities are then going to have to turn around and increase their tax revenue. It's already going to be a problem. And I'll tell you why. And this is just one little example that I happen to know about. Just about every town, city across the country receives, and I believe this is all 50 states, may not be entirely true, but they receive via gasoline taxes funding for their local roads. And they then take that money from the state. It's based on the number of miles, typically. I don't know if it's done differently here in Pennsylvania. It's done based on the number of lane miles. And each town gets an appropriate portion of that statewide gasoline tax based on their share of the roads. And they're then able to use it. Now, that's not entirely equitable either, right? Because the traffic isn't spread out evenly. Funny, right? But anyway, that's how they do it. It's pretty much the same. Well, anyway, they're expecting next year at least a 20% drop in that revenue back to the local towns for their road program. So what does that mean? Why would you care? It means more potholes probably and worse roads. And for places that already have mismanaged infrastructure, it could be really bad. I know what I was talking about before I got off track about 30 minutes ago. I was talking about how intertwined the economy is. And it's this, I was reading this story. It was a fantastic story. A guy that owns a Chinese restaurant outside of the Beltway. And had been in business, 25,000 years and never turned the lights off. And then they're shut down for the first time in their bazillion-year history. And we're supposed to shed a tear over that. Well, anyway, he was talking about all the people that are affected by him being closed, the supplier and the insurance provider and the guy who sharpens the knives and his bank and on. And then the tax revenue that, many places have some type of employment tax. And all that stuff is going to be affected one way or the other. That's what I talk about with the intertwining of the economy. And so, you say, oil's $0 a barrel. Who cares? It's going to be a problem. People aren't driving. The gas tax is down. All these things are going to filter down. And some of these places, like the city of Chicago and many, many small towns, have not been well managed or don't have the financial resources, however you want to look at it, whatever you want to call it. They're already in trouble from day one. States include Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's had a budget problem going into this. Most states did. All this talk about the mismanagement and corruption in Puerto Rico, and New York City got about the same problem. New York State, about the same problem. Lots of debt. I think California is another one. Get something in my throat. It's not Corona. Relax. You want to get to the front of the line, just cough, right? I ordered my cloth face masks. They're coming in June. I'll be ready to go in June. I'm supposed to be getting one tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. I can only hope. They're supposed to come in today. They didn't come in today. It's supposed to be tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I just I'd be curious to know if you look at everything that's going on, you think that how tumultuous things are. Are you going to plan for things a little bit differently going forward? You're just going to take the tide that say, everything's going to be fine. There's not going to be any issues going forward, and everything's going to go back to normal. I got news for you. If that's what you think, you might be in for a big surprise. I'm thinking about maybe taking tomorrow off, guys. I'm a little on the fence right now. We'll see what happens. I was thinking to myself, you've been running pretty hard. And it might be time to take a day off. We hadn't had an extended break from the podcast in a long time. And I don't think I'm going to do that, at least not now. I might later this summer. We'll see what happens, but we'll see. I'll see. You'll get the notification. You're subscribed, right? I hope everybody's subscribed at this point. I know every time I say, hey, subscribe to the podcast, nobody ever does anymore. So I'm assuming that everybody listening is already subscribed, or maybe they just don't want to be bothered, but now would be the time to do that. Either way, I'll see you next time I come back. Make it a great day.